It's time for talk and confessions.
Yeah, so buckle up.
Yeah. Du ser att det står räck i alla fall. So we released a film yesterday. We're going to take you through all the mistakes, all the things we learned, all the quirky little things that happened during this very long production process. And hopefully you can learn something as well. A little bit of backstory. This film about Matthias and his studio, the idea came to me when I was there checking out the location for a client shoot back in March this year. This is the place. We got some gear. The whole reason I was there was because Sound Toys, an American company who makes audio plugins to do music on your computer a little bit more fun. They contacted me and said they wanted a film of Matthias' plate reverb, because obviously this is the only one that they could track down on YouTube, and it was here in Sweden. They had gathered all the other stuff that they needed for this film that they were making back in their warehouse in Burlington, Vermont. But this unique piece was only here in Sweden, so we had to go film it.
So we had the honor to film a box.
A box.
How do you make a box interesting on film?
This was a challenge for sure, but this is not what this story is about.
I love this. This is amazing.
The whole reason that this film was made was because I went there to check out the location. After talking to him for about 2 hours, I got this gut feeling that I've learned to trust now, which says, I want to make a film about you. And I asked him, and he said, yeah, that would be fun. So I went back home and I have another idea. I wrote it down on the list of ideas for films to make, and then it sort of faded out of my memory until you joined in early April. And I was like, yeah, I have this idea, we can do this film.
And I just said, like, game on, this is going to be so fun.
Yeah,
I was so excited to go there to the studio as well, just by seeing a short reel that you showed me. And I was like...
And his eyes literally... Ding.
Just a normal day at the office.
What was your initial reaction when we entered this place?
It's a children's playbook, but for adults. No, that sounds awful. No. I got that feeling that this is his safe space to explore things, and that's so inspiring to see, like, so authentic, like this is how I work.
Entering this place was like entering Matthias' brain. Matthias is such a unique character, and he's a very good storyteller, and he talked a bit about creativity, and I could see some parallels to how it is creating films and how the process is this organic thing that you have to follow along, and you can't control every part of it. You have to go with the flow and see where it takes you. And he has that kind of approach to music, to producing music, and that resonated with me. So I think that's what made me feel that there is a story here, but I had no idea what the story was going to be until we started editing, basically.
Planning this session. So this is our room. This is Matthias.
We set up the interview, and it's like, okay, how do we choose our angle here? Because there is so much to choose from. But we found a pretty good spot in his little control room, which is in the center of everything.
So we used the red Komodo for the A-cam and the Canon R5 for a B-cam with some cine lenses and panel frame, like shooting like
through the panel frame and through the window as a backlight.
Yeah.
10 meters away from his control room, there were real windows that was going to the freedom outside. So we thought we'd take this light and we amplify it through the window onto the back of his neck where he was sitting. So we get a cold light from that side, and then we had a big softbox thing with a warm light in front of him. And the B-cam we set up on the opposite side of the lamp to get a nice shadowy side of his right part of the face. One of the funniest things with making these films is that you learn so much that you would never learn otherwise. And that setup went well, and we started interviewing. We pushed record on the cameras and we pushed play on Matthias, and then he just basically started talking. And once every maybe 5 minutes, I could put some wood on the fire that was him talking, just to steer him in a direction of like, yeah, we might want to explore this some more. And then he just kept talking, and everything was packaged in a story. So we have so many stories during this 70 minutes of interview.
it was a hard, difficult process to choose the narrative in the post-production. During the interview, what went through your mind? Was it like, wow, such great stories, so inspiring, or was it more like, how am I gonna find the narrative here?
I try not to worry too much about controlling the narrative while doing the interview. How my mind works when I'm doing an interview is like I'm building this tree in real time in my head. Like the person is talking about this, I hold on to certain things that they say. Those make branches out from this tree. And then I try to remember everything. Sometimes you go into a narrow little subject like this and there are new branches, and then you go out on one of those and you have more branches. And sometimes that tree grows very big, and this was the case here.
Then you press and go, this is amazing. I didn't know that we were going to do this today.
So everything he said, I wanted to ask more questions about. But then he started talking about something else, and there were even more questions about that. So I guess I could have talked to him for 24 hours straight, and we wouldn't have covered it all.
There are a couple of stories that he's telling you about during the interview that we chose not to have in the film. They're great stories. And it's like 5 or 10 minutes of him storytelling about certain
like an instrument or
a band that he worked with, and so on. And it's a great story, but we don't find the place for that in this film.
Because when you do the editing, you have to create some sort of framework for the viewer to hold on to, otherwise it gets too messy. And these stories are great stories, but they were very hard to fit in there. Also, while filming, after the interview, we were shooting a studio tour, and we did him constructing a sound, and we tried to get some B-roll, but it was really hard not to get carried away and just film everything and just film him talking about everything. Even after the interview, he had so many stories about everything that he showed us in the studio.
Like the pipe organ, for example, if you have seen the film.
And we just have to take a deep breath. Okay, how do we get the footage that we need here?
What is our start frame? Like him entering the studio maybe, or him scrolling through his old vinyl records.
Yeah, and get those kind of shots where he's doing stuff without talking. I was just constantly filming him while he was talking about stuff. You get a lot of footage with someone talking, but then later in the editing process that's going to be a problem, because there's someone talking in every frame that you have. That makes the film very, very long. We captured what we need to capture, and then the hardest part was actually getting Isak to stay away from the piano.
You're never gonna leave this place, are you?
What do you think? We realized, like, in the midst of Matthias walking around and talking and being in construction sounds or whatever, we noticed that we both were choosing the exact same frames, or like shooting, and we were
right.
Like,
the plan when we went into this place was that, okay, I'm gonna do the A-cam, that's gonna be for the actual film, and he's like, you're gonna be shooting behind the scenes for this film. It didn't turn out that way at all, because both got really inspired and we ended up shooting the same
like
shot.
Some really amazing jokes from Matthias. I just happened to be in front. And
yeah, so we had the luxury of having basically a 2-camera production for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Vad sägs om ni bara håller snattra? 94 högtalare och en mick liksom, tack. Det blir ingen skillnad.
Choosing what to put in the film was maybe the hardest part. And then we traveled to Ireland to make the films that we made in Ireland. Those films, combined with a lot of client work, delayed this project a bit.
So we literally put it on the shelf and reopened it in like August, I think it was.
I think it was in August. And
a couple of months later.
Are you having fun?
It's kind of fun to edit Matthias while he's playing.
I was in Portugal when you sent me like a first draft.
Yeah.
I think it was even longer than it is now.
I think the first draft was like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You had done the selection of interview parts that were interesting. Then we have the process of what parts of those are going into the film.
Yeah. And
then we combine the...
And in what order?
Yeah. For me, this was the first project that I started to editing on like a hero film, this concept that we're doing, I remember like how like that's sort of choosing what narrative exactly. Do we want this as a description and a voiceover, or do we want a talking head of Robin explaining things?
The challenge is to keep the pace up in the storytelling, showing different things and cutting between different things and adding personality so it doesn't stay on only one person in one room the whole time.
I think it's interesting with this film, like it is 36 minutes, the final version that is out now.
Yeah.
And it's basically one location where the narrative is taking place, and also some shots of you here in the studio workspace. It's not Matthias going to different places, doing different things. It is him playing around in his studio and all of those variations. And I still think we did manage to pull off a half an hour of interesting content from one room.
It doesn't get boring. I've seen it now like 10 times, the full version, and not a single time I've been bored. And when everything was done, I finally got word from Sound Toys that they were agreeing to sponsor this film.
In some way it tells us that what we're doing is interesting and impactful, and people want to know about it.
Giving a little hint that there is a possibility that this dream of ours can be self-sustaining without interfering too much in the content. Who is the target audience? Who can you flirt with? This is basically a film that is super nerdy on analog music production, and not everybody is into that. So how can we make it a film that sort of attracts people even if you're not that interested in it?
Yeah, because that's going to be the story of this channel. It's going to be 100 films about 100 different people with different narratives and
different nerdiness. We talked about this yesterday, and it's very interesting because what Netflix and the other streaming services has done over the last 10 years is they have enabled niche content to go mainstream. So we were talking about The Queen's Gambit, for example. I have no idea how to play chess. I don't know the rules. I've never been interested in learning the rules, but I still immensely enjoyed that series, which is only about chess. And the reason that I enjoy it is because there is this human story, a character that evolves. No matter what the context is, you can always put that human story in there and make it interesting. What those streaming services have done is normalize that you can have really niche content, and people are used to watching new niche content that they are not into because they know and can expect there to be a personal story in there that they can enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do.
It feels like this film is a statement of our ambition in production level.
Yeah.
And like what to expect from films to come.
And also we're still in the beginning of this process. We're still learning how to do this.
Yeah.
Which is so much fun. Huge thank you to Matthias for doing this, and also to Sound Toys for sponsoring it. If you haven't watched the film yet, you should do it now.